As a photographer, I think one of the hardest things to do is just maintain a good workflow. And a workflow is your series of steps, things that you do for a specific reason in order to achieve the final shot. Your workflow is really what saves your sanity in a complex environment. And I think a lot of times photographers forget that photography isn't just the photographer taking images. It's the makeup artist doing makeup. It's the hairstylist doing hair. It's the model modeling. Everything together, all the elements combined is what make up that final photograph. Your workflow allows your team to be able to follow along according to whatever process that you're using. Your workflow is what dictates what that image looks like from the time it goes into the camera, to the time it hits a screen, to the time it goes to print or digital delivery. It's what keeps everything working on set. Think of it like an assembly line. As a fashion photographer, shooting medium format is not only a privilege, but it gives me the ability to have a ton of extra detail I don't necessarily have with shooting 35mm format. I have a ton of extra detail. I have a ton of extra dynamic range in my images. I'm able to blow up my images in a way that I couldn't before with a 35mm sensor. If I need to crop into my images, I have a ton of extra detail I can go ahead and do so. So as a fashion photographer, if I really want to show small details in the clothing, I can crop an image directly into those small details. Medium format has a different look to it. Most photographers can essentially look at an image and say that was shot with medium format. It's because of the specific imagery, the way that it looks, the depth, the field. The depth of field is completely different than it would be with a 35mm sensor. There's a really thin plane of focus, right? The focus is directly on those eyeballs if you're shooting something like beauty or fashion. You can see specific points of what you're trying to reach, and then everything falls off to a beautiful gradation, almost like a butter, if you will, of blur. There's a couple reasons that I choose to tether anything. The first is digital backup. Everything that I'm shooting is backed up natively to whatever PC, Mac, anything that I'm using on set. So everything has a redundant copy. So I make sure that if my file fails or my CF card fails or an SD if you're shooting SD fails, all of those are safeguarded on a computer. So you automatically have a backup. The second thing is when I'm working with a makeup artist, hairstylist, wardrobe stylist, anyone on set, they're able to see what I'm doing in person. Instead of standing directly behind me, I'm allowing them to see things on a physical screen. So our whole creative team is processed. Everything that we do, they rely on my tethering in order to make creative decisions on set. Color management is the process of keeping your colors accurate from the time you take an image to the time you deliver your file. Now, when you're working in commercial photography, specifically something like fashion, I want every single bit of the clothing, the makeup, the hair, the wardrobe to be accurately represented to the client as they know what they're ordering. Shooting with my pro photo lights, using Capture One on set, I have a great workflow for color management. I have a great consistency in every single color that I'm taking on set. So I make sure that every single file, from the time that it goes into the camera, from the time that I take it to the time that it's delivered, is completely accurate. When I'm shooting medium format, I'm shooting and tethering directly into Capture One. Capture One is really what unlocks the power of the XF body. I'm able to have a ton of high dynamic range. I can see information in my black points. I can see information in my white points. So if I go over or underexposed for whatever reason, I can recover the information while I'm working on set. My team is actively looking at every single image that I'm working on. We can tweak things like contrast and exposure and white point and all the rest of it while I'm working in something like Capture One. So as we're discussing color representation, one of the things that you'll realize is that I'm using an ASO monitor. Now, for those of you who've never used an ASO monitor, they have up to 99% color accuracy depending on the color profile that you're using, which is an amazing thing. And what that means in layman's terms is just you can see the colors as they're represented in person. Reds are reds, blues are blues, greens are greens, and so on, which is extremely crucial when you're shooting anything like fashion or beauty because you want to see the colors as they're represented in person. You're photographing things like fashion, so you want to showcase different fabrics in the way that they're moving. Or you're photographing hair and you want to showcase the way that they're moving, and you want to capture motion. Speed is important. The D2s allow me to freeze motion. So as you see my makeup artist blowing the hair or blowing my subject's hair, you can see that I'm able to freeze every single strand of hair that she has on set, which allows me to showcase a beautiful image in a way that I couldn't necessarily do with slower lights. When you're trying to buy a new camera, something like medium format, it seems unachievable, which necessarily isn't true if you know where to look in the right place. The reason that I work with digital transitions and shooting medium format is because they really make it accessible for every single photographer to have a medium format camera in their hands for a fraction of the price, not just on the retail side, but even on the rental side. It allows me greater flexibility, especially because I live in a larger metropolitan area, for me to photograph the things that I need to photograph. If I was photographing things and I traveled on location, they still allow me to rent those specific units. They'll even ship it out to me as I see fit. Don't forget that workflow is one of those crucial aspects of keeping your sanity on set. It's what makes sure that your images look the same way that you envision by the time you take them to the time that they come out. It's the final product. It's the thought process to the final product, the way that you're developing your images. A crucial aspect of a workflow is to make sure that everything works as it's intended. And that's what I want you guys to have as a photographer. If not, if you don't have any consistency that you're working with on set, all these different variables are gonna affect the quality of your images from image to image to image to image. Workflow is what keeps me on track every single time I take an image.